Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for 5 critical marketing shifts every franchise and multi-location brand must make in 2026. I'm Krish Coughran, co-founder and president of Ignite Visibility, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. I've spent the last 22 years wearing nearly every hat in the digital marketing space, from sales to operations to everything in between. And throughout my time in digital marketing, I don't think we've ever experienced a moment of such disruption as we are seeing right now with the advancement of AI. The pace and scale of change over the past dozen or so months has fundamentally reshaped how we at Ignite Visibility are servicing our franchise and multi-location brands, how we think about innovation, and how we future-proof our digital marketing growth strategies for our clients. Which is why I'm so excited to guide today's discussions on the most significant changes shaping the space for growth-focused franchise and multi-location brands. During this webinar, we will tackle some of the biggest and most frequently asked questions we are hearing from our clients, which I'm sure many of you share, such as, how aggressively should we lean into AI-driven SEO and content? What is the right balance between offline and online investments as consumer behavior continues to evolve? These are precisely the types of decisions that will separate brands that simply keep up from the ones that pull ahead. So, like I was saying, we'll unpack the 5 most critical shifts and accompanying strategies to address now, share our experience on what is working across leading franchise systems, and give you practical frameworks you can take back to your marketing and leadership teams so that you can be one of those brands that pulls ahead and wins. Our goal is to leave you here with some clear and actionable priorities. So as we look at what's going to be shifting in 2026, we can see here the biggest and most important shift that we're seeing, of course, is that with the rise of AI, it creates new investment channels as we look to focus on the LLMs. In addition, with digital now being first, multi-touch consumer journeys require advanced attribution. So we'll talk about attribution in this webinar as well. With that, local activation and brand consistency are increasingly critical as we move forward. So as you see here, Forrester is saying that 15% of digital spend should be reallocated to AI search as we move forward into 2026. Additionally, we're seeing 83% of B2B marketers, leaders expect ad spends and investments to rise as we move forward. With that, let's go ahead and get into it. I'd like to kick things off by having 2 dynamic igniters and 2 of the most experienced innovators in the digital marketing and franchise space introduce themselves. Joe Mohay, our president of franchise and multi-locations, and Karen Devlin, our VP of AI SEO. Let's start with Joe. Joe, go ahead and introduce yourself.
How you doing, everybody? Yeah, so my name is Joe Mohay. I've been with Ignite since 2023, but I've been in franchise marketing for about 13 years. And prior to that, another 10 more years in bringing buyers and sellers together, both through digital and print media. So I feel like I really understand this space as it's continuously evolving, and excited to share my insights with everyone today.
Hi, everybody. My name is Karen Devlin. I'm the VP of AI SEO here at Ignite Visibility. Like Krish, I have a long history in the marketing space. I've been in the SEO industry specifically for about 19 years now and have served at several different agencies, both from some of the heavy hitters in our industry all the way down to new and emerging startups. And I'm thrilled to be part of the Ignite team here as we unravel our AI SEO package for you today.
Amazing. I'm so excited to have both of you joining me for this webinar. So let's jump into it for shift 1. Everyone wants to know how much you should be spending on AI SEO. How much time and effort should we be investing into visibility in AI search? So with that, I'll let you take it away, Karen.
Great. Thanks, Krish. So everybody knows that AI SEO is the next new big thing, right? What this means is that as we look ahead to AI SEO, understanding that it's going to require different strategies and different techniques, we need to start mobilizing our budgets to prepare for the coming change. And we also need to better understand what parts of our business may be impacted and how to recognize those changes and get ahead of the curve. So one question that we as leaders receive all the time is, why does AI SEO matter? As you'll see on the next few slides, not only is this a huge shift for our industry, but it's actually having tangible results. The results within traditional SEO are quite different than what you'll see in AI SEO. And we know that many of the same tactics that we use in SEO today will still give us a lift in AI SEO, but it's making sure that we're looking at it through two lenses and preparing ourselves for what it means to be successful.
Yeah, it's interesting because on here it talks about tailored content. And I think it's important to note that as we're looking at, deciding should we be using AI content, it's still really important that we have hyper local, custom tailored SEO content when we can, right? And so that it's localized. Can you speak to that a little bit as well, as we're talking about, potentially using AI content?
Yeah, for sure. In fact, one of the examples that we'll bring up over the next few slides gets directly to that point. I would actually argue, Krish, that now more than ever, hyperlocal content, very specific content is critical. It's what's going to differentiate you from the competition.
Agreed.
And I've heard, with franchise systems, they have a leg up over a normal brick and mortar local business because of that scalability of hyperlocal content. So I'm excited to see what you have to share, Karen.
That's a good point, Joe. So it's almost like your brick and mortar real estate, that sort of digital geography advantage gives you a brand advantage as well. So this is a study that some of you may have seen. This was published from our friends at SEMrush, and this is based on real user data. It predicts that AI search will actually outpace traditional organic search, such as Google, as soon as 2028. You'll note that major shift has already started taking place. And the green line on top is particularly interesting to me because this is an indication of overall search behavior. And what this tells us is that it's taking fewer searches to get to the desired answer. So we're getting the answers we want more efficiently.
Actually, I did want to point something out, Karen. Kind of reminds me when mobile and desktop searches had like this complete switch over, probably the mid 2000s, when everyone was just automatically going to mobile search, and it just had a major catapult on marketing. So interesting, that's just a few short years away.
That's right. Yep. We'll see what comes next. One more industry study before we get into our case study. This one was published by Profound. I love starting with this slide because I think this in itself gives your leadership the answer as to why you need to optimize for AI SEO. This shows that the results from ChatGPT and from Google, for me, surprisingly, only overlap by 19%. So there is a huge opportunity that we can capture within ChatGPT that is currently invisible within Google. And having insight into each of these separately and how your business is reflected is critical.
That's very interesting to see. So what we're saying here is that they're not cannibalizing each other, the traffic. So this is completely new searches on the other platforms.
That's right. Yes, each platform reveals your brand in a very unique light. Okay, so this is a case study that really illustrates the differences between how one search can give you completely different results depending upon the engine that you're searching in. So here we're going to put one query into 3 search engines. On the traditional SEO side, we're going to be using Google. And then for our generative AI engines, we have Google AI Mode and ChatGPT. So we're going to run a quick experiment to ask all 3 engines the same question, which is, Joe, would you care to read our question for us?
Where can I find a gym nearby that offers women-only classes? So let me ask you, Krish, what do you think that result might look like?
Prior to this webinar, I might have thought that you would get the same results on all 3, but I think we're going to see that there's going to be different results based off of the different platforms and some of the other factors that these engines are taking into consideration.
Yeah, I would agree, and I do know what's ahead, but it just alarmed me when I first saw this exercise. How far off the way the learning language models are looking at content differently than a Google search or a Google AI mode. So it's going to be an interesting exercise.
So let's first look at Google. This is our traditional SEO engine. So when we plug this search into Google, where can I find a gym nearby that offers women-only classes? What we see is somewhat surprising, but also not too surprising. So the sort of newer component that some of you may recognize is that we do get an AI overview. Our click-through studies have shown that this top right result in our knowledge panel, the one that's circled on the laptop, is the one that's most likely to receive a click. When we click on this result, this is where it becomes more familiar. We're actually taken to the Curves homepage. And if we look at the content of the homepage, this, by the way, is a little bit of a collage. So I've taken elements of their homepage and sort of clustered them together. But you can see why this ranks number one. This is SEO 101. We've got women's fitness, women's gym, women's classes all over the page. What do you think, Krish? Surprised?
No, I'm not surprised because we're looking at classic SEO, right? Where we're looking at, the title tags and some of the traditional SEO factors that are coming into play that is also then getting picked up by the AI overview.
Yep, for sure. So we're now going to put the same question to our first AI engine. So this is actually Google AI mode. This is a little bit different from the AI overview. So make sure that if you're running this test at home or at your workplace, click the little AI mode button because this is actually going to give you your Gemini results. It's not quite the same as google.com. What we can see here, though, is that we're starting to get a little bit more sort of LLM-like. It's not necessarily a blue link like we would get on a Google page. If you can see the laptop text here on the left, this looks an awful lot like ChatGPT, right? You're getting a text answer, you've got your prompt box, and Gemini here is synthesizing the information for you in a way to kind of give you a quick answer. However, remember, we're still in Google here. We're not on ChatGPT yet. So again, if we look at the part of this page that's most likely to get an interaction, it's going to be the top right. It's again this knowledge panel box. And this time, we don't see the Curves homepage. So Joe, I'm going to ask you, what do you think we're going to get in the top right box this time?
Well, it's interesting. You're not also seeing a Google business profile either. I would think that probably has just as much relevance as a Yelp listing, but it's showing Yelp. And I suppose with all the great review content and authority that Yelp has and trusted sentiment, that's why it earned its way to the top.
Great point. So if we think about Google, Google takes you to a website. AI mode is taking you a little bit further to that decision point, right? It's actually giving you reviews and a map in hours, giving you everything you need to get into your car and go to the gym. And then finally, we now ask the same question to ChatGPT. So I'm actually in the Pacific Northwest. I'm in a little town called Bend, Oregon. And here, when I ask ChatGPT, where can I find a gym nearby that offers women-only classes? ChatGPT actually gives me a nice generated response, but the first citation here, or the top result, points to a local influencer blog. And notice in this case, Curves does not even get into the mix. So we're now getting very hyperlocal, very specific. ChatGPT is trying to give me in Bend, Oregon, an option that fits sort of my user history and my memory.
Interesting as you see the evolution of the results that are showing up, from the Curves homepage, which is classic SEO and that race, the competitiveness race to the top. Then you got into the following results, which was a review site, Yelp, which we know review sites and reviews are going to be critically important as we move forward. But even taking that a step further now and seeing that they're looking at influencers in your specific location, where you're getting really hyper local results that also have recommendations on where to go, also probably based on engagement and reviews, is really interesting, that evolution that we're seeing.
I would also add, Chris, just like what you said at the beginning of the presentation, this hyperlocal content creation is absolutely critical to appear in these ChatGPT searches. And that's not a heavy lift for a lot of businesses. If they just take the time to tell their story on the hyperlocal level, they could see some big wins there.
Yeah, and absolutely, and as well, how important, critically important, your omni-channel and multi, channel marketing is going to be, because you need to have this omni-channel solution for the LLMs to pick it all up.
So to wrap this section up, I couldn't quite end there. There was something that was bothering me, and that's this idea that I basically got the same result for both of my Google experiences. I got curves in both cases, but I wanted to understand why ChatGPT didn't even mention curves at all. And so I asked ChatGPT, I said, why didn't you give me curves as a result? ChatGPT's response surprised me, but it also really gave me reassurance and confidence that our approach works. And so what ChatGPT said was, first, it did not return curves because of two primary issues. The first is SEO 101. Curves had sparse local listings, so they didn't really have an optimized location page on their site. Their GBP profile, Joe, to your point, was not consistent and optimized. And that's number two. So basically, ChatGPT is saying, you know what? I thought about curves, but I didn't find enough consistent information that made me confident to recommend it to you as an option. The third point is the one that I think that the audience on this webinar can really embrace, and I don't want to underestimate the importance. And the third bullet is, curves is not known for classes, they're known for gym access. And so this, I think, is really critical to the audience here, because ChatGPT is telling me that it is understanding the curves brand from a perspective of an emphasis on gym access. They are a gym. They have flexible hours. You can go by yourself. You can go with a girlfriend, but they're not necessarily a boutique that offers a heavy rotation of specialized classes, at least in the way that ChatGPT understands the brand. So what I want the audience on this call to come away with is to understand that we need to make sure that our brand differentiator is crystal clear and that it is strong enough to set us apart from our competition, because AI and LLMs really pick up on those nuances. And if we can build this out across the omni-channel, so Joe and Krish, to your point, then we will have a unified, really unique presence that's going to bubble up.
Yeah, I think the time is now to take complete inventory of every digital asset and make sure there is a storyline look and feel, but also that accuracy of information, because surprisingly enough, curves didn't win that result because of that. So imagine a big franchise system like that, if they were to do that with accuracy, how much of an impact that can make to the bottom line.
Yeah, exactly. What is it that you offer that nobody else does? And how do you spread that message across all of your content? So we're going to pivot just a bit. Here at Ignite Visibility, we approach AI in a very coordinated way. We actually look at your technical visibility along 5 different factors: retrievability, content alignment, authority signals, competitive differentiation, and entity mapping. And so this slide actually spells out how we weight these different factors as we guide you and your brand through our AI technical audit. So at the beginning of every engagement, we always want to make sure that you have a very strong, stable foundation in place. We always start with a really thorough technical audit. We've recently augmented that to include these 5 pillars to make sure that your brand is really prepared on a technical level for making sure that you're visible and retrievable in those AI engines. And so key takeaways from this section: we know that traditional search and generative search behave differently. We've seen that through our example with curves. And again, we want you to understand that AI search isn't replacing SEO, but the SEO practices that we've always done still apply. We need to be looking at how we appear through different lenses, and we do need to be adjusting our strategies to make sure that we're addressing all of these factors that influence the AI. Most importantly, our competitive differentiation and also our brand consistency. So now we're going to get to the question of the hour. What should we be spending on AI SEO? So we've actually put quite a bit of thought and research into this. And we know that if your marketing budget today, let's say it's 9 to 10% of your overall spend, in order to really keep up with AI search, we recommend allocating 20 to 30% of that budget to AI SEO. Doing that now, positioning yourself for the future, is really going to give you that competitive edge. And at this time, we have also seen that it's really an opportunity, right, Joe and Krish, for brands that start early to get a leg up.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting because you've mentioned this throughout the presentation that a lot of this is traditional SEO, but with tweaking it, almost like rebranding SEO on what you're doing. And I alluded to it earlier in the conversation as well, that, when you think of things like traditional link building and reviews, which have always been important, in some elements now we're just maybe focusing a little bit more on reviews with the LLM in mind. We're focusing a little bit more on content and making sure that content is hyper local, even though that has always been important. But maybe you could just highlight some of the biggest things that are different from the SEO where this allocation of resources would go to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it depends on whether you're approaching it from a national or local level. When we typically engage with national clients, we really lean into brand messaging and consistency. We make sure that that is fully developed and deployed on the brand-owned domain. We also put a lot of effort into digital PR and link building. We have some social tools in place to help make sure that we have unified messaging across social platforms. We're actually able to do that at scale now through automation. So that's a new service that we're very, very excited about. At the local level, we typically recommend focusing on content that, again, serves that hyper-local purpose. So it's making sure that your listings are accurate and complete. We want to make sure that they are all syncing up. And we also want to make sure at the local level that you're really engaging with your audience through reviews. So again, there's a social component to that. And we have seen some tremendous results with getting GBP reviews and with really focusing in on making sure that the local sentiment is really positive and that there's a big presence at the local level.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I was thinking as well. So I think when you think about the difference between SEO and then the ability to say, hey, what we're really doing is AI SEO, is really determined by the management of the GBP pages, having control over that, getting reviews, also looking at your social media and then specifically, how are you generating reviews? How are you managing your online reputation? And it's critical, we believe, to utilize tools that are AI enabled, such as the Rallyo tool that Ignite Visibility provides. And at the same time, then writing the content in order to really be picked up properly by the LLMs. If you don't have those elements in place, you really can't call it AI SEO. You're really doing traditional SEO. Do I have that right?
Absolutely. Yep, for sure. And with the volume that we're dealing with at a local level in managing, all of the directories and all of the social sites, it does become incredibly important to have a tool that can scale.
Yeah, and I would just add, looking at the exercise you did earlier, if they are not, our franchise friends that are on this call, if they're not taking the time to set up their franchise system, their franchisees with these tools, the opportunity cost is really, really high. So when you're thinking of percentage of allocation, just think about what the value of that customer that is not going to find you. Basically, you'll be invisible to them on one or two maybe of the other places people look. So keep that in mind as you start thinking about your marketing allocation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe. And with that in mind, let's go ahead and move into our second topic, our shift number 2, investing in attribution for smarter marketing decisions. Attribution modeling becomes even more critically important as we're thinking about the future and moving into 2026.
I'll just kind of give you some of the key takeaways of some of the slides here. But I mean, truly, attribution is no longer just a reporting function. It is part of your growth, or should be part of your growth strategy. Franchise brands that are pulling different levers and testing different marketing strategies, typically, there might be some guessing. There might be some silos created and a lot of wasted dollars. So it's really critically important to make sure your attribution is set up for success, especially going in this 2026 year with all the different multi-channel marketing opportunities there are for you. This gives a little bit of attention to the franchise development life cycle. And I've been in the franchise marketing game, like I said, almost 13 years. A lot of it was in the franchise development side. Just remarkable how many touch points and how many different sources of marketing are working in conjunction with each other. And it really is, it's remarkable how the franchise buyer and the local customer are navigating these touch points, both if it's online or offline. And so you've got to make sure you're covering all the bases here, because it's very hard to measure. And not only that, but you want to make sure that you have these attribution channels set up, because marketing professionals in our field are finding it to be very, very challenging. And they've got to make sure they have the right tools and platforms to use, which we will highlight here as one of our solutions we offer to franchise systems.
I think so. Yeah, exactly right, Joe. Because when you think about, how the customer journey and how your customers find you, right? In today's world, there are so many different touch points. Maybe they've seen a linear TV ad, and then they decided to go to YouTube to watch a video about your brand. Then from YouTube, maybe they're going to Google and doing a search, and they're getting AI overview searches. They're getting the Google results. They might be getting reviews, and they're touching all of these different points. So it's important that we're able to track that and then try to determine, okay, what is the right marketing mix? What is the proper media mix in order to capture as much of these users at the top of the funnel, and then of course all the way down to the bottom of the funnel?
Yeah, so data excellence and data integrity is key when it comes to measuring and attribution. Every franchise marketing system needs to start with clean, connected data, and that first-party data cannot be fragmented. It cannot be inaccurate. Otherwise, that'll fuel the learning in a more negative way. So to have data integrity, I think in this particular measurement here, is the competitive advantage franchise systems should have, and working with partners that have that technology and capability. So you can see here, there's really 4 pillars to data excellence. One is using the right analytics platform and tag management strategies, which many marketers know how to do. Having that display and illustrate in the proper reporting so that you can dial different views to generate the result that you're looking to, the measurable outcome, and then making sure that layer of data privacy is implemented. And we have the fortune of working with a lot of health and wellness brands, and that is an absolute critical piece, is making sure that data is protected. And then making sure you can detect any anomalies that might come from some data that might not make sense for the brand. So really key pillar here for franchise systems. All right, so first and foremost, you've got to take the time, make sure you have the right tools in the toolkit. Like we like to say, get the plumbing right first. Every dollar you spend has to be able to be measured. And before shifting media dollars, you need to make sure that you're measuring that data, whether it's through analytics, through the customer data that you're providing, and your CRM and point of sale. Got to make sure you have the right tools for the ability to track that revenue.
Yeah, and Joe, this is one that I see businesses skip all the time, right? Everybody wants to get the results and start measuring, but so often we go through, an elaborate process, and then at the end of the day, we're not quite sure whether our data is can be attributable. So I think this is spot on.
Yeah, because in essence, this will turn that measurement into tying it into an ROI. What revenue streams are generated from those specific marketing channels? And that's really a core responsibility of any marketer or anyone in sales, is you want to close that loop from sales to marketing channel so that you're able to optimize for the highest performing marketing mix that you can find. And so it's pivotal in this day and age with media mix modeling and incrementality testing to be able to use those strategies to make sure you're getting the best ROI on your marketing dollar. So the approach to measurement, this here on this slide is really in essence just showing the user here where to spend your next dollar across both online and offline. So it's tying in on the left there the marketing investment and what the revenue was generating per that specific channel, and having a very holistic approach because you're using digital media along with offline media. And so you're having the proper offline attributions tying back into these reports so that you're able to make sense of what marketing dollars are performing for your investment.
Thank you for that, Joe. That was really interesting. And I think as you kind of teed it up, the evolution of the perfect marketing mix is what we'll jump into next, which can be very complicated as we see. It's a mixture of all kinds of different analytics, all kinds of different touch points that we want to look at to determine where should you invest those dollars.
You might think it's either one or the other, right? It's either digital or offline, but really there is a balance between both. And you have to look at it in an intelligent combination because you really never know where that local customer might be coming from at the end of the day. So this is a nice kind of viewpoint. And I'm going to do a little plug here. I came across this great media publication that was shared at the last franchise show. Franchise Update Media does the AFMR report survey, and a number of brands had been surveyed on where they spend their marketing dollars, where they're getting the best ROI in all the different channels when it comes to the customer experience on the local level. So very much in line with what we see here, where up to 70% of marketing dollars should be allocated to digital. Why? Frankly, because it's measurable, it's targeted, it can be dialed up, dialed down, and set an ROI target quite easily. The offline side, although it's not as measurable, there is impact there because these offline channels drive awareness, right? Especially when you talk about hyper local level marketing, that local event, that local Little League team that you're sponsoring or that nonprofit is building awareness that ties back to the digital searches or the AI search engines as well.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember and remind the webinar viewers here that we're talking specifically about the franchise and multi-location space. It could be different in different industries, but in this particular one, there really is a more heavy emphasis on the online marketing. And then you can also think of it as kind of the mix in between the national campaigns and maybe what corporate is doing with their national campaigns to create the brand awareness on the offline marketing, and then why we would want to see so much investment into the hyper local online marketing is because then we'd want to really tie that in at the bottom of the funnel as we're looking at people who are searching for products and services in the hyper local space.
Yeah, so offline marketing, just tying it back a little bit more to that print media, the billboards, the direct mail, TV ads, they still have a place in marketing as you would expect. It's just depending on what type of industry the business is in, what type of market size, the demographic. That brand recall does bring in a lot of offline references to the website. And as you've seen in the earlier material with AI engines, they are deciding between who ranks higher just by those citations and those mentions across digital and different local properties. So, definitely don't want to discount offline. You just got to make sure there's attribution so you can measure it the right way.
Absolutely. And there can be specific offline marketing in the, franchise and multi-location space that are really valuable. What we're seeing too with some of our friends over at Ever Connect is that they have an online media guide that does very well, where people really kind of look at those as having authority because they're based on a vetted structure on how you get into those mailers, and then those mailers perform very well, often on paid to be listed, but then also paid for per call. So these are definitely things that you should be thinking about. Those as well then have a digital edition. So then you can not only be offline, but then also be connected to online. And these are the very same type of reviews and websites that we're seeing getting picked up by the LLMs. So something to consider.
The one I really like here to speak on is just really the channels that are driving the best ROI today. I think this is a pretty logical way of looking at things. When you look at the numbers, though, it's interesting how SEO and even email have a compounding effect on ROI because, as we all know, SEO, especially with you, Karen, in the call here, it does not provide immediate gratification, but it provides long-term value that continues to pay it forward, basically. So, and then of course your digital ROI is still very important because you're doing paid media that is necessary to drive local customers and is justified by the ROI that you're making from your paid media as well. And here's some numbers to consider. So, channels by different sources of marketing. So your SEO on the B2B and B2C level has a very, very high impact, like I mentioned earlier, and provides substantial returns. But like I said, it'll take 4 to 6 months out and even longer if you think about the AI engines that you have to optimize for. For search, there's a really strong ROI relative to the investment you're making. It has a little bit more immediate gratification. So if you're looking to do some different campaigns to dial in on a different season or doing testing out a new product, paid search, paid social is the way to go. Email marketing has also a strong ROI because you can nurture and reignite old leads. You could keep that person in your subscriber list abreast of what's going on in your business. And since you already have their email, you're not actually paying for those distributions of that email message other than maybe the list settings and some creative. So there's definitely a great ROI. And then, of course, our LinkedIn and social platforms, you'll see great ROI from that as long as you have the right targeting, the right platform use, and making sure that you're hitting the right audiences at the right time. And we were talking earlier this morning about what's evolving when it comes to AI in the customer experience. And I think we can all appreciate us as users and many of our audience today, when you're on a website or you're interacting with the business, more and more you're seeing AI having an effect in that experience, whether it's a chat bot or a loyalty program that's texting some different elements of a promotion. There's more and more of that AI use when it comes to customers on the local level, and more brands that adopt it now are leaps and bounds ahead of others for their marketing presence.
Thank you for that information, Joe. Very helpful. Let's go ahead now and move over to our shift number 4, spending more at the local level. This is really interesting because as we were talking about the difference in spending versus offline versus online, and I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but we also want to talk about where does the national spend go versus the local spend, and how much should you spend in order to maximize your results for AI SEO. So with that, Joe, why don't you walk us through what these numbers that we're seeing here?
No question about it. I think it's evident across AI engines, across digital, that hyperlocal spend, that hyperlocal investment in your marketing is critical going into 2026. So what we're seeing on many of our clients is that they're tailoring their national spends down a bit so that they can invest more on that local level, supporting the franchisees and encouraging the franchisees to have more of a presence both online and offline and using their dollars wisely. That's really the focus for brands going into 2026, is supporting that local spend more than ever. 46% of all Google searches have local intent, and 72% of consumers will visit a business within 5 miles after their local search. So there's folks using online to research, but doing offline behaviors, whether it's picking up a phone, making a call, or coming to the store location to make that purchase. So online and offline really work hand in hand when it comes to local marketing.
So Joe, it's all starting to make sense now. So this gets into why we need to have a solid attribution strategy in place.
That's right. Yeah, you've got to know where your marketing dollars are performing best. Attribution by channel, by online and offline, making sure that you have the right tags and the right attributes so you're able to decide which marketing channel will drive the ROI needed to justify that marketing investment. So attribution is key, especially when you're talking about offline marketing channels. So yeah, in essence, when it comes to digital, hyperlocal marketing, it is absolutely imperative that you have your GBP profile optimized. It's basically your virtual doorway to your business. And I think we've mentioned in a few different ways, whether it's AI and learning language models, looking at that content to decide if it's going to prove to be the result for that specific query, or of course our standard traditional SEO. You've got to have consistency of listings. You've got to have a very robust and active Google business profile with content that is both served through hyperlocal targeting as well as social content, and making sure, again, that you are using your review channels to not only manage and monitor your reviews, but provide that response and that timeliness that separates your brand from others. Keeping that cornerstone of local SEO in mind, as a franchise system will have more impact than a standard local business today. So real important that franchise brands are working with the right partners that know how to scale this localized content in the right way to move the needle for the franchise system.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note too, on like now, given the AI and what is available, the different ways in which you can do this. Often you're looking at, you have, maybe you have 100 or 200 locations in your network, in your system. Each one of those locations you want to build authority for. So you want to have as many pages speaking to the keywords, speaking to the products, speaking to the services as possible. So in the old days, that would be very difficult because it would be cost prohibitive, because you would need a human to write each one of those pages and do all of the individual research and analysis, where today you can utilize AI. So you'll see that there's different levels that we have created for our clients when we're talking about AI content. So it can be, we could still, of course, do the full content. And I still think on some level that's still probably the best, but not always cost effective, right? So what we do, though, is we try to utilize the AI to create most of that content, whether it's creating the initial draft or creating the content entirely. You can go with that model too. So we could do it, where we have AI and you can feed in the prompts of making sure that they hyper localize it. They've got the right keywords in place, and that the AI writes it. And then we can have the client actually review that and edit it themselves. And you've got, a pretty inexpensive way to create lots of hyper local content over hundreds, if not thousands of pages, right? What we really like to do, though, is have the AI create it and then have our human editors take it to the next level, right? And so there's all kinds of really interesting different ways that you can do this. And that same analysis applies to social media, right? And wanting to have social media hyper-local posts and hyper-local customizations. Again, that's why using a tool like Ralio is so imperative, because it allows you, through the AI-enabled tech, to do some of these things and have individual customized hyper-local content that can be spread out across an entire network or ecosystem.
Yeah, and then the franchisee can focus on what matters most, and that's growing their business and getting new customers.
Okay, so when we talk about that local spending, where will that allocation go? Where does the budget need to be allocated to? And of course, we've already talked about it a lot. GMB optimization is going to be really important, whether it be going in there, making sure that your NAP is appropriate, making sure that all of the information is accurate, making sure that you have customized hyper-local posts, as well as then being able to generate reviews. So you're going to want to have an investment there. You definitely also want to invest in your local citations. These are kind of the same things that will build out your authority and drive authority into not only your GMB pages, but of course drive that authority into your hyper-local pages. So similar to always the old school link building, you're going to want to have local specific landing pages. We just touched on that entire topic on the previous slide. So, again, having the different elements in order to create those pages. And then, of course, hyper local social content. So again, use a tool like Ralio to get you there. So on average, each location should probably allocate 15 to 20% of their total marketing budget to these hyper local strategies.
I would just add, with AI learning language models, it has way more impact than it's ever had, because you're basically, getting value. If you do this the right way, you're getting value from the traditional way Google works and the people searching that way. But then the AI learning language models will also obviously incentivize you if you're doing it accurately and in a scalable way as well.
Yeah, so let's bring Karen back in, our AI SEO expert. And Karen, I love this slide. So if you could, can you talk to us about the local ranking factors and what's most important to us when we're working with our clients?
I was hoping you would give me this slide, Krish. I love this slide too. So this, to me, this is a beautiful thing because it makes this very digestible. And this almost gives you like a blueprint or a cookbook to follow, right? So throughout this whole presentation, we've talked about the importance of making sure that we have content to address your users at the local level. We know that's the bottom of the funnel, right? Joe mentioned 70 something percent are going to drive, less than 5 miles as soon as they see content that points them to one of their hyper local, destinations. So here at Ignite, we've actually identified 4 critical factors that we know are going to give you a huge boost at a local level. So it comes down to on-page optimization. These are going to be your location pages, local citation. So these are local directory listings, everything from Yelp, Angie's List, Facebook, all of these sort of, local business directory listings. GBP optimization, we've talked about a lot. This is a really, really big one. We cannot underemphasize how important it is to not only have your GBP information accurate, but really, really get aggressive about going out and getting quality reviews. Make sure you develop processes internally to get those reviews solicited. If you don't have time to do that, we can do it for you. We've got a wonderful tool called Rev that actually proactively requests reviews and make sure to curate those reviews and get your GBP boosted immediately.
I would say something here real quick. I think that's partly why Yelp ranks so high on that Google AI mode, wouldn't you think? So
Yeah, that's why Yelp came up, right? When we asked
over
for
Google result, that was actually really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So making sure that, your clients are engaging with your business in a way that's visible at the local level. So yeah, those are the 4 things: on-page optimization, pages on your site, your directory listings, your Google business profile, and then of course tying that all together with reviews, which again, you can solicit manually through your internal processes, or you can leverage our automated software that can help you accomplish that at scale.
Okay, that was a great conversation. I think we're beginning to wrap it all together here now. So we'll go ahead and move into our shift number 5, investing more in your website and creative marketing assets. You always want to be thinking about, how does your website look? We're of course, highly focused on top of the funnel to bottom of the funnel. I always talk about, it's not enough to drive traffic into your website. Once that traffic is on your site, you've got to convert it at a high level. At the end of the day, that's what's most important. So you can see here, 38% of users will leave a website if the design is unattractive. So you always want to be updating your website, updating your UX, making it, the design user friendly as you move forward.
I mean, I would even imagine it might be higher than 38%. I've noticed that as websites evolve, it's much more image intensive, so I've noticed like having a visually appealing website, especially I think for, our Gen Zs and so forth, is pretty critical.
No, that's absolutely right. In 2026, the users are going to be expecting a really well-designed website that's visually pleasing. And if it's not, they're going to punish you for it because they're going to bounce. They don't have the patience for the old school websites. And again, so you've got to invest in conversion rate optimization. So it really is key to maximizing the traffic that's coming into your site. A well-run CRO program more than pays for itself, right? You can increase your conversion rates by 2 to 3%, which can have, a significant impact on your bottom line. Increase revenues 50 to 100%. So reallocating a portion of your marketing budget to invest in things like A/B testing and UX optimization, so that you're really capturing all the the traffic from the top of the funnel to the bottom of the funnel in order to boost conversion rates is really a must as you move forward. And so we do try and include conversion rate optimization on all of our plans and all of our packages.
We've talked about so many different sort of measurement strategies that CMOs need to have in place today. We talked about attribution. We're talking here about CRO. We've talked before this about having, an attractive website that keeps up from a UX perspective. We've also talked about AI SEO. Do you have an opinion on how CMOs today should prioritize those efforts?
Oh, great question, Karen. And I don't think you can really answer that without having the proper analysis and having the data in front of you. So we look at our media mix modeling, right? That's why all of the analytics and why all of the CRO is so important, because you do want to look at things like what is your cost per lead? You do want to look at what is your cost per acquisition. And that can be different in different industries and in different environments. So I couldn't say like which channel specifically, but that is part of the media mix modeling and part of the strategy that you would want to look at moving forward. And then we certainly do that with our clients. We analyze the analytics and then we help them create that model to where which channels they should invest in and how much. Okay, and this is just more about the importance of research and discovery when you're doing your conversion rate optimization, right? So we're going to look at all of the different factors that are going on in your page to maximize that performance. So I'm not going to read through every one of these. The main point here is that CRO is critical to the success of any good digital marketing campaign.
Especially as you are looking at that attribution data, right? When you're starting to see the ROI coming in from different channels, it's an incentive for you to continue to refine and optimize the best performing channels so you can even get 2x or 3x your return. So a critical part to any paid media is to constantly be testing through CRO.
And at the same time, your creative assets matter more than ever. So as we've been talking about, it's been a theme throughout this entire webinar is that you have to have really hyper-local content, hyper-local creative, but how you do that and how you disseminate it across a large multi-location brand or a large franchise is very important. So it starts with having very good creative at the brand level, at the franchisor level, so to speak, that then can be disseminated and cascaded down through all of your locations and multi-locations. So, really, looking at how you're creating your videos, how you're creating your images and graphics, up-leveling those, and then using a platform like Ralio where you can control the brand messaging, and the AI can even help you identify if any of the franchisees or the locations are going outside of your brand guidelines. So this is really important in controlling the quality of your messaging and the creative. And we can see when this is done properly, you can get up to a 20% lift in your conversions. And so here, again, we've got all kinds of different creative strategies, right? There's all of these different things that are out there. But at the end of the day, what is important is that they're designed to create conversions for you. So what we do here is take a look at all of your creative, create a holistic strategy, and then implement those for our clients. And you can see it will go from all the way from brand development to videos to, the imageries on your hyper-local pages to what's going on with your social media. Having really good creative is important.
Yeah, I would just underscore the importance of creative with a purpose, right? And I know that's something that our clients find great value in working with our creative teams as we make some amazingly cutting edge designs and styling and creative, but we're in the business to generate leads and get them an ROI. And that's the real true measure of a successful partner, whether it's us or others that you might be engaging with our franchise friends in this call. Make sure they're looking at both, not just the creative, but the impact it has on your marketing investment.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, so let's wrap it up with some last insights. Joe, if you had to pick the top shift in franchise and multi-location businesses that should be focused on in the coming year, what would that be?
The big shift, I would say, is really just taking inventory of every and all piece of digital assets you have, making sure that not only does it have consistency, brand messaging, but differentiation, right? We talked about that earlier when Karen identified the different exercises where it literally said because the brand messaging and differentiation was so compelling, it ranked someone above another. I think that was very, very interesting. So for our CMOs and C-suite executives for franchise systems, make sure you have consistency of brand and that impactful competitive differentiation, and make sure your franchisees are following suit, because like we always say, the rising tide lifts all boats.
How about you, Karen? What's the top piece of advice you would have?
I think my top piece of advice is prepare to be uncomfortable. I think that we have spent a long time focusing on our brand-owned domains. Many of us have done a great job of creating these really rich, beautiful websites that have a ton of information on them. But I think we're reaching the point that in some cases that's not enough. We really need to be thinking about how our brand resonates across the omni-channel. So what is your presence like on your local reviews? How are you known on Instagram? All of these types of things, I think, help to shape your brand as a whole. Knowing that those sources are becoming more and more critical, I think means that we can't ignore them any longer, and we're going to have to squirm for a few months.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really well stated. So, thank you for those comments. So if you need help navigating these shifts or need AI SEO or any other strategies we covered today, please don't hesitate to visit us at ignitevisibility.com and contact us to speak with an expert and even qualify for a custom digital marketing strategy audit tailored to your needs. So here at Ignite, we're passionate about helping franchise and multi-business locations grow, and we're ready to partner with you.